Awesome. I hope that we are live. So, sorry everyone for the minor delay, but we're happy to get started. Today with us, we have one of the earlier grantees, one of the longest standing partners developers working on the ssv network. We're very happy to host the Stader team. Today with us, we have Amit from Stader Labs. He's the CEO and co-founder. We have Vibin. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. He's leading the ETH, Polygon, and Phantom integrations for Stader. So definitely two smart individuals that can share some of their knowledge on the staking sphere about LSDs. We'll get to it in a second, but without further ado, just to save some time, I'll give the ball to Amit to present himself, the team, followed by a short presentation and the AMA. So happy to have you guys. Let's kickstart this call.
Thanks a lot, SSV team, for having us here. As always, it's a great pleasure to interact with you and your community. And thanks. I just want to start off this presentation thanking you guys for all the support we have received so far, navigating the ETH ecosystem and also the nitty-gritties around the technicalities of ETH staking. So let me jump quickly into what we have in here for today. So by way of introduction, my name is Amit. I am one of the co-founders of Stader. We also have Vibin, who heads EVM chains business for us, along with Tanvi, who leads ETH specifically. So to give an introduction about Stader, we started our journey by launching our first product on Terra in November 2021, reached $1 billion of assets that was staked with us, and over, I think, 70,000 users that were that had staked with us on Terra. Obviously, after the Terra 1.0 collapse, we had aggressively expanded to several other blockchains, including the likes of Polygon, BNB, Phantom, Hedera, Near, etc., and have over $100 million of TVL today, and more than 70,000 users that have ever staked with us, and a 160K strong community across these chains. The reason why we are here today is to talk about our Ethereum liquid staking token, which is called ETH, that is going to be launched soon. And so would love to go deeper and talk about the design of ETH and how it adds value to the current Ethereum staking ecosystem. Let's examine this by looking at some of the challenges that are being faced by the ETH staking ecosystem today. As many of you know, obviously, ETH staking is highly concentrated with a few entities. Like the top three entities have more than 50% of the currently staked ETH, and the top liquid staking protocol has over 30% of the staked ETH, while commanding 90% of the market share. And some of the other LSDs that work with permissionless node operators, we obviously respect them, respect what they built and their entire design. In fact, one of their designs is one of our inspiration. But because of some constraints, they have struggled to kind of keep up the pace with the users' demand and scale the supply. And LSDs beyond the top protocols do not have meaningful DeFi adoption or have limited DeFi acceptance across the ecosystem, right? So while these are the key challenges that one needs to keep in mind, how are we addressing this problem as Stader, and how does our design looks to solve these problems is what the next set of slides are going to be. As we all know that Homesteakers are the backbone of ETH staking, and ETH staking has been designed in such a way that it is very non-punitive for minor lapses in validator performance, unless and until there is a coordinated network attack. ETH staking and ETH slashing are quite low. So, and obviously anybody who has sufficient amount of ETH can run an ETH staking validator with several infrastructure players like block staking as well as ANKR, etc. So how is our design better than the existing LSD designs in the market? So since we have an ethos to encourage decentralization, we've made Homesteakers as the backbone of ETH. What that means is the minimum bonding requirement that is required for Homesteakers is only 4 ETH, which we believe is sufficient enough insurance against any kind of tail risk and slashing events. This compared to a 32 ETH that is required for a Homestaker to start a validator today, and compared to a 16 ETH that is required to start a validator with a permissionless liquid staking protocol, right? What this means is obviously they get to the barriers to entry for some of these Homestakers goes down significantly. Now, this can potentially catalyze hundreds of thousands of Homestakers to join the ETH network and start running a validator. Maybe I'll also start running a validator soon. Now, the other thing that it will amplify is the return on capital invested for the Homestakers, because they are only starting with 4 ETH compared to a 32 ETH or a 16 ETH. And then they get to share half of Stader protocol's revenues. The return on capital invested for these Homestakers enhances significantly. The second important component of ETH's design is the overall architecture. We have a multi-pool architecture, which I will explain in further details. But at a high level, what a multi-pool architecture consists of is a permissionless pool and a permissioned pool, and also a DBT pool as soon as SSV goes live. While permissionless pool is the core component that we would delegate to encourage decentralization, permissioned pool is also there in order to scale up with the user demand in case scaling the Homestakers is a challenge. So what this enables us to achieve, it helps us scale and then at the same time encourage decentralization, so that users don't have to choose between decentralization or a scaled up DeFi protocol. So that is the necessary component that we have created in our ETH design. Obviously, as SSV goes live onto the mainnet, we would be shifting the ETH staked to SSV network. What that means is the bonding required for these Homestakers completely goes down because of the value addition that you guys bring to the table, right? The third component is right from day one, we'll have MEV and all the other transaction layer yields. So the yield that we will offer to the users, which is the ETH stakers, are going to be the best in class. And nothing is complete in LSD world without a fully developed DeFi ecosystem. Given our expertise of building DeFi across the 6 blockchains which we are live on, and 40 plus DeFi integrations that are live for our liquid staking tokens, we will the most important priority for us as soon as we launch ETH will be to bootstrap and grow the DeFi ecosystem around ETH. Yeah, just wanted to reiterate the key points for the Homestakers. One is 4 ETH bond, which is the lowest in the ecosystem. And what it means for the Homestakers, increased earnings and much better return on capital invested. And then permissionless way to run a node operator right from day one.
Amit, can I stop you for a quick question?
Yeah, please go ahead.
So how will validators be allocated between the different pools? So if I'm a staker, I can choose permission, permissionless, or DVT. How would that engine look like?
Yeah. So right now, because DVT is not yet live in the mainnet, if we go to the mainnet ahead of you guys, then obviously a homestaker who chooses not to okay, let me just take a step back. The permission set pool is the set of validators that have demonstrated consistent performance and have a high reputation and no history of malicious intent. Those are the validators that will go into the permission pool, which is determined by the Stader community and Stader DAO. through a very stringent data-backed performance assessment process. So those set of validators are eligible to join the permission pool. Now, all other validators who don't want to reveal their information publicly, who just want to run a validator, don't have any history of performance, they can immediately start a permissionless node from day one. So then coming to the third block, which is DBT or SSV block, we will give an option to all of them to switch over to SSV or DBT. And then it depends on the technical barriers to switch that over. But we would obviously, once the technology is stable, we would love to convert all of them to DBT, because it further enhances all of the points that I mentioned, encourages decentralization, adds resilience and fault tolerance, and also decreases the bonding requirement.
Got it.
Cool. Should I move ahead?
Yeah, I have a bunch of questions, but I'll ask them after you're done with the PPT.
Okay.
But yeah, please continue. Yes.
Yeah. Cool. So coming to the I think showing the overall architecture, we'll have the Stader stake pool manager where the users are staking their funds to. And then the stake pool manager allocates the funds between the permission pool and the permissionless pool. So obviously we will have a preferential mechanism to allocate the funds to permissionless pool, because that's one of the key pillars where we want to encourage decentralization. Obviously, permission pool is required to scale in case the permissionless pool is not able to scale significantly, as we have to keep up with the users' demands. The third one is what I highlighted earlier, which is the DBT pool, where we will encourage the stakers or node operators to actively switch once your mainnet contracts are live and they're stable.
Yeah, I think, Adam, even if we have some technical barriers in terms of people switching, right? Obviously, the delegation logic, once DBT becomes stable, is something that will consider like the SSV pool as a key pool that we want to build. And therefore, all the new delegations that ETH will get, for example, will then be distributed accordingly. So that would be the other way we will kind of look at moderating how much is in each pool as well.
Mm-hmm.
Got it.
Vipin, do you want to elaborate on this slide?
Yeah, I think 100%. So I think, like Amit has been saying, one of the key things that we want to do is allow Homesteakers to really scale, and part of that is going to come from the capital efficiency going away and the bond required becoming lower and lower. Right? If the economics of this improve, and obviously ETH staking has been kind of designed in a way that it's simple for Homesteakers to do this. We also want to make this like with very low capital barriers and kind of increase earnings for people. Now, the bond is like a critical part of that. And one of the great ways in which SSV fits with this whole philosophy is the fact that it improves fault tolerance, right? If instead of a single node operator, a homestaker running the node and the validator being dependent on just one node operator's performance, instead if we had a cluster of nodes, which are all run by homestakers or a combination of homestakers plus a permission set of operators, I think that increases the resilience of every single validator in a meaningful way, right? Which we think, obviously, the slashing risk and the penalty risk kind of drop by like an order of magnitude, right? Because the probability of multiple of those operators, actually a majority of those operators doing something that will lead to slashing is actually much, much lower than a single node operator doing it. So the first important thing is that SSV will drop the slashing and penalty risk that we have for our validators, right? And this will in turn kind of allow us to have potentially much lower bonds as well, right? Because the key reason to have a bond is also to ensure that user funds that are now being kind of operated from a validator perspective by homestakers is always safe. Now, with SSV helping to reduce the risk to user funds, we can look at the lower bonds as well, right? And we feel obviously that this can be a huge catalyst, right? Imagine, obviously, we have had like fantastic scale up, even with 16 ETH as a requirement. And obviously, a lot of Homestakers run nodes with 30 ETH as well. So imagine this going even lower than 4 ETH with SSV as well. So which is what we are quite excited about.
I'm sorry for being. Sorry, go ahead. Yeah. I just I got a question here that some users would like to, if it's okay with you guys, if you could take a minute to explain what it actually means, bonding ETH. Maybe some users are accustomed to hearing a different terminology or different way of phrasing it. So if you could address that, please.
Yeah, happy to do that. I think it's a very important question given what we have been discussing. So thanks for bringing that up. Right. Essentially, the way to think about the bond is that when we do permissionless node operators, essentially, we will get 28 ETH from the Stader pool. So essentially, users will stake with us. We will take 28 ETH from users and actually add it to the 4 ETH bond that we are calling from Homestakers, and then kind of deposit on the beacon chain as a full-blown 32 ETH validator. Now, the reason this is called a bond is because it's almost kept aside so that as a guarantee for performance, right? And the way it's kind of set up is that in case there is a penalty that happens because the node of the Homestaker has kind of gone offline for an extended period of time, let's say, what happens is essentially, first, the set of penalties that happens to the 32 ETH validator balance will actually go to the node operator balance, right? So if I look at this as two parts, the 28 ETH from our users and the 4 ETH from Homestakers, essentially any penalty due to lack of performance will first eat into the 4 ETH that has been put up by the Homestaker, and that's what we call a bond. It acts almost as like an insurance for user funds. A lot of people call this over-collateralized, therefore, right? Because for every 28 ETH of user funds, we actually have 30 ETH deposited with the Ethereum network, and the 4 ETH is put up by people who are actively kind of running those nodes and have like great incentives, therefore, to also run these nodes in the right manner.
That's a great answer. Thank you for that. Now there's a small, short follow-up to that. They're asking, you mention constantly the importance of permissionless and why you guys are working towards a permissionless solution, whereas the permission solution is just as a way to scale or as a backup in a way. So could you please, in your own words, explain why it is so crucial for you to enable a permissionless solution, and why is it that such a focus for you? It's such a stage of development.
Yeah, absolutely. I can take a crack and Amit can chip in as well. So essentially, I think the interesting thing is that the entire ETH ecosystem has seen some of the risks play out of what happens when a few entities actually hold a lot of like staked ETH, right? Now, essentially, what we could see was that in a very permission kind of setup, right, it is possible for a lot of these staked ETH to then kind of enable things like censorship, right? This is one of the core topics that, for example, the SSV merge series focused on as well, especially with MEV kind of coming in. Till PBS is going to happen, one of the risks is that, hey, like Lido, Coinbase, Kraken, all of them kind of have like MEV-based relays, which potentially could be censoring. Then that means that 50% of the blocks on Ethereum are being censored. Now, obviously, Ethereum is built so that it can still kind of have resistance to that type of censorship. But I think we are getting to a point where these kind of system risks are multiplied by permission setups, right? And centralized setups, which are very large. So one of the key things from a Ethereum ecosystem health perspective is to have a much more decentralized Ethereum staking, and not just people who kind of get the user funds, but also the people who operate the nodes, right? Because decentralization is important at every layer, right? It's not just about which protocol they stake with, but also, for example, if our stake, like when stake comes to Stader, right? And we then in turn delegate it via, let's say, hundreds of thousands of Homestakers, right? There is very little kind of control we can have, which is to the detriment of the Ethereum network, right? Which is in itself a forcing function and a powerful factor to consider. So that's a couple of reasons why we are very bullish on decentralization being the path to go.
Thank you for the answer. You may proceed with the presentation. Sorry for taking up the time.
No, it's a super question. Thanks, Aaron. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think Vibin has elaborated on some of the important value addition that DVT technology and SSV brings to the table. That's why we would strongly encourage, as soon as you guys go live, to cut over to DVT platform. I mean, not to mention that it simplifies a lot of our life in terms of key management and validator management as well. So, I mean, switching gears here a little bit and moving on to DeFi with LSDs. As I mentioned earlier, so LSD world is incomplete without the DeFi, right? Like, because a lot of users on the demand side, especially who are holding ETH and planning to stake ETH, they would want to amplify their returns on ETH, right? By merely staking ETH on a validator, they end up getting only the staking rewards, which are to the tune of 6.5% today, including the transaction layer rewards. Now, a lot of users would want to amplify these rewards by participating in DeFi, either by collateralizing the ETH LSD or by providing liquidity on an AMM or participating on any of the derivatives protocols, etc. Right? And who knows, like a bunch of other DeFi innovations can crop up over the next few years. So LSD is incomplete without DeFi, and with our deep expertise on creating DeFi opportunities on top of LSDs across Polygon, BNB, Phantom, etc., we have over 40 plus integrations, and we will bring all such integrations to the ETH community and grow the DeFi ecosystem around ETH, not to mention some of the automated strategies and potential smart vaults that we ourselves will build on top of ETH. Mm-hmm. Right. So users, like now with ETH, users can choose a LSD protocol that promotes decentralization and also has a fully developed DeFi ecosystem once we go live. Yeah, those are the main points that I wanted to cover. Happy to take any questions.
Yeah, since we are on the thank you slide as well, one thing I wanted to cover is when we looked at the bond requirement, right, which is what is needed to actually protect user funds, we had to do detailed simulations in terms of all the key tail risks. And the SSP team has been super helpful, especially Ford from the SSV team has kind of worked with us, kind of helped set up some of the simulations and even reviewed it himself. So quick shout out to Ford to kind of arrive at this important metric as well. So appreciate all the support team.
Yeah, big shout out to Fod. I'm sure he'll love to hear that. PhD mathematician right there. Awesome. Thank you for the presentation.
I have a question though, before you wrap things up, if that's your intention.
Oh, we're just getting started. We're just getting started.
Just warming up. I'm just wondering, sort of from a infrastructure cost perspective. So let's say if you have permissionless pools, right? It might take some cost to run because you might rely on third parties. I don't know exactly who, but then if you have like permissionless pools, so the ones that do require some sort of a collateral, and you open those up using DVT, will that lower the infrastructure cost overall? And will that carry over to the users? Like how are you thinking? How are you measuring that scenario play out?
So, Vivin, do you want to take it or should I chip in?
Yeah, no, I can take a crack at it first, Adam, and then maybe Amit, you can chip in as well. So I think one of the key ways we are looking at this, Adam, actually is on how to make the infrastructure kind of more resilient itself. And I can talk a little bit about how that will flow to users as well, right? So number one, resilience comes from multiple factors about like how well can the validator be run? And obviously having a node cluster run it kind of meaningfully helps, right? Now, in turn, when we talk about the second thing is that we would like for like not a few entities, but a large set of decentralized entities to be running this, right, on behalf of the ETH ecosystem. So essentially, one of the key advantages that we are looking at is that if, let's say, our home staking on the permissionless pool can scale to, let's say, hopefully 50%, 60%, depending on the amount of supply we are able to get in before SSV and DVT goes live, we expect that long-term, that number can hopefully go to 85, 90% and make the whole Stader protocol much more like resilient and decentralized, right? Even in terms of the node operations, right? Not just the infra, but also who runs it. So that's one big thing that we are looking forward to, Adam, right? So now the second thing is going to be that with SSV, one of the things that will happen is that if the probability of slashing and penalties, etc., that happens on other protocols will be much lower if Stader has a lot more stake flowing through DBT, right? And that automatically kind of flows through in terms of higher APR, in my opinion, for ETH users. So that's the second thing that will happen as well. The third thing that could happen is that because the bonds are so low, right, Homesteakers might be actually happier with lower commissions as well. So which is something that we could then pass on to users. So those are the three ways kind of this adds. And the last two actually will directly pass on in terms of better yield, and perhaps in the third part with lower commissions as well.
The
That's
additional
really cool.
point
You
that I wanted
basically,
to mention.
yeah, go ahead.
Sorry to cut you there, Adam. The additional point that I wanted to mention was essentially one of the most important things that we as a ETH community have to ensure is that the barriers to entry for the homestakers to start running a node has to be we'll have to work on bringing that lower as much as possible, right? Because that will impact their ROIC. Now, apart from the 4 ETH bond, there is some infrastructure running costs from their end as well, right? Now with SSV, that infrastructure running cost goes down. So obviously their ROIC can go up significantly.
Great answer. I do have a few questions. I'm going to mix them up with some community-related questions and some things that I would personally love to know. So first of all, the narrative behind LSD, we are seeing it in Masari, we're seeing it on all social platforms. Everyone's talking about it. Users would love to know how you see this LSD ecosystem landscape happening. Obviously, at the moment, we have Light on Rocket Pool taking the charge, but how do you see this moving forward, and what is the importance of having multiple LSDs on Ethereum?
I think LSDs are the word itself. Anyway,
yeah,
a bit misleading. I don't mean the other LSDs. It's liquid staking derivatives are by far the most efficient way to bootstrap TVL and capital for any ecosystem, right? Ecosystems or other L1s have spent like hundreds of millions of dollars bootstrapping capital onto their DeFi protocols and ecosystems by doling out incentives, etc. But if you actually think about it, at fundamentally at a network level, the token or the token that forms majority of the TVL is actually the network token itself. Now, by leveraging LSDs onto DeFi, you are actually not paying extra to the users because you are anyway giving the staking rewards to those users. And on top of that, you are making these L1 tokens capital efficient. What that means is you have used your staking rewards 2 times. For one, obviously attracting stakers, and then second, bootstrapping the network with capital from your native token. So long answer short, in the long run, I believe that across L1 and obviously on ETH, LSDs will play a significant role and probably grow to orders of magnitude higher than what they are today. That is why we are quite bullish on LSDs and hence building LSDs across multiple chains. On ETH, I think the market is orders of magnitude bigger than any other L1. Today, with just 13% of ETH being staked, LSDs have commanded a much larger percentage of capital that is staked with them. And then with the Shanghai coming up, we think the staked ETH is going to grow probably into the 50-60%. Who knows where it will land? And LSDs are the ones that will gain majority of the share, is what I believe. Hence, having said that, we are still very early in the LSD's journey. There are going to be several dimensions of innovations that will come up on top of LSD. One is design. We are coming up with a new design. Now, there is obviously a potential for a KYC LSD, maybe multiple KYC LSDs based on geographies. Now, there could be other innovative designs that can come up that are more tax efficient, etc. So the market is young, and hence we believe that there is scope for several diverse LSDs that bring their unique value proposition onto the table. I think we are still living in the Craigslist world of LSD.
I do have a follow-up question on that, but before I do, can you, users are saying that if you're done with the PPT, you can stop sharing your screen so they can see your face a bit bigger so they know who's talking to them. That's a small comment right there. There you go. Here's Amit, everybody. Meet him. Besides that, a follow-up question on, and I loved your answer, by the way. Follow-up questions on the LSDs is something that I would personally like to know. So you guys have experience with other chains. You've done delegation, staking, different forms of POS. It's not your first rodeo, not to mention the Luna debacle, but moving forward. How is it that you've decided to join the ETH staking space, specifically LSDs, at a relatively later stage compared to some of the other players? Is there something that you guys were planning on doing before, something that was hindering your decision, and so on?
Yeah. So we were very actively looking at ETH, and thanks to Adam and SSV team, especially Matthias, for pushing us to ETH staking. I think we have obviously we would have prioritized it, but I think with your support and push, we had to prioritize it like much ahead of all the others. And given that ETH staking is not as simple as staking on other chains, it took us some time to sort of understand the entire ecosystem and come up with a design that improves on top of existing designs and adds value to the ecosystem.
From your experience, have you learned other things from staking or DeFi or other chains that you're planning on incorporating or bringing into the Ethereum ecosystem that you're not currently seeing? Or is it more
Definitely.
of what you're used to?
Definitely. So I think some of the learnings that we've had are around, obviously the major learnings that we've had are around user preferences, right? So there are a lot of users across ecosystems that are new to crypto and DeFi that don't have the either time or awareness to manage their portfolios across different DeFi protocols, right? An example is there are a lot of users who are just like, they want yields, but they don't have the they don't have the mind space to go stake on one protocol, take the liquid staking token, pair it up with a native token and provide liquidity, and then keep monitoring that AMM pool. Similarly, there are users who will have tax implications if they exchange a native token for a liquid token, but they want liquidity on top at the same time, staking rewards on top. So some of these are very insightful learnings that we've had on other ecosystems based on our interactions with the user. In fact, we had built a vault on the BNB ecosystem where the vault just takes the native BNB token, converts it to BNBX in the backend, and provides an LP on top of one of the DEXs. Mm-hmm. Users don't see anything, like users don't even like the liquid staking token doesn't even hit their wallet, so no tax implications for them. They just get the BNB in and BNB out whenever they want.
Great answer. I know I say it often. So there's two things I say often. First thing is, how does Matty talk to everyone? How does he convince all these teams to join the space? I just don't understand. So that's kudos for Matty. The second thing,
I think it's persistence. Yeah. Persistence and ability to influence.
Non-stop, just non-stop. That's
it's
great.
Called brainwash more than persistence, but semantics.
Yeah. That was a great answer, though. So thank you for that. I mean, the second thing I always say is that us ETH people are always just looking at ETH, just looking at Vitalik's roadmap, just looking at our space, but there's a lot to be learned, a lot to bring in from other chains, other projects, other, DeFi solutions that have been working for quite some time. So thank you for that. Before we start wrapping up this call, I have a few sort of open-ended questions for you just to get your take. But before we do that, could you share with the community sort of the roadmap timeline for ETH? What can they or should they expect in the near months? And if so, how or what would be the best way to reach you guys regarding Stader ETH project?
So in terms of ETH's roadmap, we are about a couple of weeks away from the finish line of development and ready to be audited. We're probably targeting like early to mid February for the launch. That's the latest we have. And yeah, the best way to reach us is either DM us on Twitter, or there is a Telegram group dedicated to the ETH community. Anybody who's interested can join the Telegram group and ask us any questions.
Great. So just to make sure I understand, towards the end of February, we should be able to see some of that, the ETH. Okay. All right. Now yes.
Maybe before we wrap it up, we'll do like a quick alpha round. So everybody once on the call says some one thing they're excited about in the crypto space coming 2023. Could be a new crazy NFT or whatever it is, or a new chain technology, ETH, Shanghai update, whatever it is. So maybe a quick round, dropping some alpha on the community. Anyone wants to go? Maddie is smiling. So Maddie always has a crazy crypto idea cooking in the background. He's always investing in some crazy shit. It blows up.
Shit tokens.
Anyone wants to go?
I'll get started. I mean, I don't know if it's the next big thing, but it's one of those things that I'm personally really looking forward to seeing multiple options of, is restaking or reinvesting of assets that will become available post Shanghai. So I think it opens an entirely new asset class, somewhere between, I don't know if it fits properly under DeFi or not, but it's definitely going to give access to a lot of liquidity, a lot of money that otherwise would have been or is blocked. So I'm super excited to see multiple solutions that will enable me to reinvest, restake, whatever the name they'll give it in the future. But that's what I'm looking forward to. Yes.
Right. So from my end, I think one of the interesting things that we'll start seeing happening in 2023 is sort of the Ethereum narrative eclipsing the Bitcoin narrative. In the between general and non-crypto users too. So in the last, few crazy crypto blowups, we saw, basically Bitcoin taking a very center stage in discussions in, non-crypto media, in fund allocations, and the list goes on. And I think this is going to gradually shift towards Ethereum. And I think the year that marks that shift is going to be 2023. I'm not telling anyone to, mortgage their house and go and buy ETH, right? It's not an investment advice, but it is. No, I'm kidding. It's not. But yeah, I think it's going to be interesting in the next 2 years. A lot of things are going to unfold.
I'm getting a call
if you guys
from my
want to contribute
as we speak. Yeah.
I mean, if you have anything to contribute, you're welcome to it. Otherwise, I think we can wrap it up, right, Evan?
Yeah, I think from our side, like for me, I think one is obviously ETH is something we are super excited about building. But kind of talking about something else, the real world assets, right? I think beyond stable coins, many other real world assets actually getting tokenized and coming on chain looks to be a trend that's kind of catching a little bit more. And because it's so tied closely to actual utility that a lot of people are used to, right? Like whether it's stocks coming on chain, whether it's Maker kind of using like real world securitized assets as like a collateral. I think that's like an interesting space that's kind of starting to open up. So we are going to, like, at least I'm looking forward to how that plays out. And hopefully that becomes the next $100, $200 billion kind of coming onto DeFi. So
all right.
I'm excited about a lot of areas. As founders, we always are excited about many things. But I think definitely the ETH scaling and the privacy tech is what is quite exciting for me, especially the ZKs and all the associated applications that can be built leveraging the ZK is what is definitely quite exciting. Apart from that, EigenLayer is another technology. I'm sure many.
I was waiting for someone to say EigenLayer.
Yeah. It's a matter of time. Yeah.
Yeah, it's
go
definitely
ahead.
quite interesting.
I agree.
All right, so
Matt
just
is nodding.
important to note before we wrap things up, the committee would always ask me, so I'll update. When Stader have updates for you regarding roadmap timelines, we will make sure to forward those communications. Make sure we will ask them obviously to post in the community so you guys can follow that as well. But in general, I'm sure that a lot of the people involved with SSV, involved with you guys, especially from the grants perspective, would love to see this come to fruition, to see how an idea with a small grant, an idea, or someone like Maddie shoving it down your throats until you execute that idea, actually, ends up becoming an LSD that people use. So that's really exciting for me to see. But besides that, I really wanted to thank you guys for the time. A lot of our users are very excited about this project. So am I. And we'll host you guys right around the time when you release it so we can live demo and show the community exactly how it works.
Absolutely. It's always a pleasure to be
Congrats,
here,
guys.
and pleasure has been ours. Thanks a lot for all the support.
Thank you guys. Thanks for the time.
Thanks a lot for
we'll talk
coming.
soon.
Thanks, you.
Bye, guys. Thank you. Have a nice week. Bye-bye.